Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today. My name is Mayan, and I'm head of corporate marketing at Freightos. As you likely know, Freightos has spent the past 6 years building digital freight sales tools for logistics providers, as well as the world's largest online freight marketplace. Today, we're sharing our hard lessons learned from online freight sales presented by 4 subject matter experts. VP Marketing, Eitan Buckman, who will cover some industry trends and digital customer acquisition. Freight Team Manager, Zach Dubois, who will address scaling digital support. Manager of the Freightos Marketplace Sellers Team, Hezi Fisherman, who will discuss automating sales. And Daniel Bataille, who runs Accelerate, our freight rate management and digital freight sales tool suite, and who will address market opportunity. One small housekeeping note before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the question box of our Zoom control panel. I'll bring them up during the presentation, and we'll also have some time for questions at the end. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Freightos VP Marketing, Eitan Buckman, to get us started. Eitan runs Freightos marketing team and has been with Freightos from the early beginning, which means he's seen his fair share of marketing mistakes. Over to you, Eitan.
Hey, thanks so much, Mayan, and thank you everybody for coming. We're really excited about this. Again, my name is Eitan Buckman, and I run the marketing team here at Freightos. You can see me there on the left side of your screen. I usually hate webinars because they can get really, really boring, and that's not what we want to do. So when we set this up, we figured that we'd keep it moving pretty quickly. We said this would take about 45 minutes. Our plan is to spend about 30 minutes talking and presenting some of the lessons that we've learned, and then build up from there and pass the mic over and let some people ask a couple of questions. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat box during the course of the presentation. One of the things that we've noticed since we've gotten into the digital freight game, and it's been a couple of years now, seven years or so, is that there's been this trend towards increased recognition of the importance of digital freight sales. More companies are getting involved in digital freight sales, and the demand for this webinar, I think, is the best testament for that. It really surprised us, and it takes a lot to surprise us. We have pretty high demands from ourselves. And I think that when you look out at the ecosystem and you look at how flourished it is, there's still an endemic issue with the way that a lot of companies approach digital freight sales. And if anybody has seen Field of Dreams, they know the line, if you build it, they'll come. And that's not how, that's not how digital freight sales work today, right? Today, if you build it, they might come. This isn't only about technology, right? Selling freight online requires a lot more things aligning than having an online sales portal in order to make it happen. And the goal of this webinar is really to share some of the lessons that we've learned on how we tried to start selling freight sales online, how we failed, and how we learned some lessons from it, and hopefully impart those lessons to other companies. So of course, as likely every single person on this call knows, when we started checking out how many companies were selling freight services online 4 or 5 years ago, the answer was really simple. It was 0. It was just impossible to get an instant freight quote online from legitimate companies that weren't inflating their margins by 10, 20, 30, 40% just in order to provide pricing that they could stand behind. And of course, we've seen some really, really impressive solutions evolve out over the past year or so. And it feels like you can't go more than a day or two without coming across a new solution. On the screen, you can see, Hapag-Lloyd, Maersk, Agility's Ship of Freight, Kuehne + Nagel, who've always been a front runner when it comes to digital freight sales. But what we keep on seeing is companies launch platforms and they don't necessarily go anywhere. And that's something that needs to be resolved. And I think the most important reason it needs to be resolved, especially looking at it from within the logistics industry, is that if we don't do it, somebody else will. And that company that will probably starts with an A, right? Amazon, Alibaba, large companies that used to focus on the nexus of data and e-commerce and have now added a third pillar of data, e-commerce, and logistics. And of course, there's an entire burgeoning industry of digital freight forwarders and aggregators, large carriers, small carriers, large forwarders, small forwarders, and there's a lot happening. And the truth is, looking through the list of the people that have signed up for the webinar, a lot of them are competitors. So first of all, hi, it's great to have you here. The second thing, the reason we even tried to do this together is that our industry is in a really, really special place where we're all discovering how this works together, right? Nobody knows the trick to selling freight online. This is something that's emerging together. And I'll take you back a couple of years. Venmo, digital payments online. was not something that people really thought would ever take off. There's PayPal 15 years ago, 20 years ago, but it never really moved beyond eBay or topical solutions. Uber, it would never strike anybody here 10 years ago, hey, I need an app to book cabs directly from people that aren't licensed cab drivers. Airbnb is not a concept. I would never want to stay at my neighbor's house. The App Store, Apple's App Store, that's an entire new ecosystem, right? 15, 20 years ago, there is no concept of buying an app online for your cell phone, and it's become something that's a basic norm. And that's empowered an entire ecosystem of app developers, but that's not regular behavior, right? That took customer transition, it took an experience transition. And when you look at it from the outside, when you look at Uber or you look at Airbnb, it seems like they took over the world. And on the right side in this chart, you can see the number of bookings per year that Airbnb had. And there's a really long dry period in the beginning. Most of us probably heard about Airbnb sometime in middle of 2010 or middle of 2011. That's after the success started, but there's a long dry period in the beginning where customers don't know that these types of solutions exist. And that's exactly why this makes sense for us to all talk about together, because transforming customer expectations, providing radically better solutions for shippers of all sizes is something that will increase the competitiveness in the market, not in terms of competitiveness of pricing, but competitiveness in terms of the level of service we need to provide. Now, why do we feel entitled to talk about this? And why do we feel like we're subject matter experts? Because we feel like we've built the world's largest digital freight marketplace. And I do want to spend a minute talking about what we've done, not to advertise our services, but really to talk about where we've had the opportunity to learn lessons. This will take under 60 seconds, so bear with me. Basically, Freightos provides a couple of suites of solutions for digital logistics sales. So we work with both carriers and freight forwarders. Our Accelerate platform is a rate management platform that large freight forwarders use in order to digitize their multimodal rate management and online sales. Web Cargo is a platform that provides direct connectivity between air carriers and freight forwarders. And both of those together represent the supply side for the Freightos marketplace, which is the only logistics seller agnostic, not antagonistic, the only logistics seller marketplace to reach shippers at scale. And we're talking, of course, 6-digit numbers of shippers. In short, the Freightos marketplace consists of an online platform where you can instantly compare loose cargo, container prices, together with added services like insurance and customs brokerage, get instant prices across dozens and dozens of logistics providers, look through them based on the greenest, the cheapest, the quickest, the most reliable quote. Of course, a lot of reviews within the marketplace to make sure you're choosing the right provider. And then on-demand shipment visibility into exactly where your goods are and communication together with your logistics provider. And this whole component of building this together has given us a lot of insight into scaling digital sales. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about customer acquisition and some important lessons that I've learned. And as Mayan was kind enough to say in the beginning, yes, I've learned a lot of them from making mistakes. So I hope that other people can benefit from some of the mistakes that I've learned. The first thing, and I'm going to start with Mario. I think probably most people have had some type of interaction with Mario or Super Mario in the past. And this is a concept that comes from, the field is called job to be done. Basically, we all know Mario. We all know he's a common plumber. And we all know that there's a flower that if he jumps on, he can shoot fireballs. And we all know that once he can shoot fireballs, he can take apart any turtle and he can really destroy and save the princess. And I bring that up because many of us have a tendency when we sell a digital solution to think that we're selling the fire flower, right? We're trying to sell Mario on this great flower that will help him kill turtles and succeed and get the princess. But in reality, what we really need to sell is not the flower, but to sell Mario on his own vision, being able to picture himself as capable of doing way more because he consumed the flower. So you're not selling the flower, you're selling the ability to save the princess. When we work and when we look at our potential prospects, and this goes across the gamut from the smallest customers that are selling on Amazon FBA to Fortune 500 customers, you need to intimately know not just who your prospect is, but really what they want to accomplish. And even though they're all shippers, right? They're all importers or exporters, and they're all trying to move goods from A to B, the end goal of how they move and why they move is very different. An FBA seller, for example, might be very interested in just focusing on his margins, not spending any time on freight, finding another digital solution very similar to the solutions that he uses for profit management. A VP of logistics at a Fortune 500 company or a director of pricing at a Fortune 500 company does not care about saving time and not talking to freight providers. He wants to speak to freight providers. He wants that interaction. He wants to know everything about data, and he wants to dive really deep. So a lot of what comes down to the marketing side of things comes down to knowing what your customers want to accomplish. Once you know your customers a little bit better, you also have to start tailoring your acquisition channels. And this is something very interesting that we've seen with some large platforms that have launched in the past. There seems to be a schizophrenic identity in terms of, are you trying to target your existing customers or your new customers, right? Are you trying to get new revenue out of efficiency by going after your existing customers and spending less time on sales? Or are you trying to find new customers and create new revenue streams, very frequently off of smaller buyers and who you've encountered in the past? When it comes to the size of the customer, first timers that have never shipped and require education, or enterprise providers that require very, very good pricing and SLAs, there's also a very big difference. So knowing the seniority, knowing the knowledge level that each user has, and knowing the right channels that you should use to pursue them is important. And there's just a general rule, of course, within the tech space as well. As you go after a smaller market, right, fewer companies, but higher sales values, your sales channels will change. If you take Elon Musk and SpaceX, when they try to convince a company to use their services to shoot a satellite into space, there's probably about 50 to 100 companies in the world that are potential users. And Elon Musk will get on an airplane and work with every single individual company from a sales perspective in order to get to them. Traditional freight, might have more companies than 50 or 100 with higher sales values, and that's why they require inside or field sales teams as well as events. But as you go to smaller sales values from smaller customers, you start to benefit from the long tail, far more customers. And as you go towards that broader customer, but maybe less potential revenue, you have to start looking at more scalable channels. So PPC advertising and display advertising can work very well when you have recurring business. If you're going after users that are only booking once to 10 times a year, PPC and display, it's going to be really difficult to make that work in your advantage, and you're going to need to start looking at free acquisition channels. And in terms of acquisition channels, this is something that I kind of laugh every time I see a logistics provider, carrier launch their platform. And I see this press release end up in Journal of Commerce or Lodestar, which are fantastic outlets, and we love reading them here at Freightos. Smaller users are never reading trade publications, right? That's not where they're consuming their information. You need to get in their shoes and figure out, what are those users actually reading? Do you need to get to TechCrunch? Do you need to pitch a tech reporter in order to get in there? Do you need to get into FT, or do you need to get into Bloomberg, right? You need to get to where your users are, and that requires a shift from a logistics perspective and getting out of where we used to be of, we're talking to the logistics industry and now we're talking to everybody. Another really important thing is organic search on Google. And of course, Google is worth $730 billion for a reason. It's because that's where everything starts. The typical buyer journey for buying a car right now has over 45 digital touch points. And that's shifted over to the B2B area as well. McKinsey and Google research that we came across at Freight Tech, a conference that we ran last week, 2 weeks ago, showed that the search term volume for professional freight terms is increasing almost 15% every single year. Some additional data that we have, both from our own experience and from working with partners, is that within the logistics space, logistics keywords on mobile are increasing every single year by 22%. And it's only 2 to 3 years before search terms for freight, searches for freight terms online mobile will surpass desktop. So that's a direction that you really want to look at. And you have to make sure that you are on top of acquisition for organic customers. The last thing is that one of the mistakes we learned when we first launched the Freightos Marketplace was trying to get every user to sign up. And when every user signs up, you get a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about when it comes to freight, right? Some people are just amateur users. Some of them are larger users, but have a lot of questions. And you end up wasting a lot of bandwidth educating customers, right? Your sales team end up footing the bill to educate customers. And sometimes you'll get one LCL shipment out of them. And sometimes you'll get 30 containers out of them. But typically you won't. What we ended up doing is we tried to take as much of that educational material that we needed to use anyways down cycle and tried to put it up at the top. And we came up with books and videos and courses and articles in order to educate users and use that education as a form of customer acquisition. One specific example that I think was quite successful for us, this was more on the smaller user scale, was working together with 22 e-commerce and digital solution providers to write an 127-page book on how to get started with importing. And we created separate versions for Kickstarter campaigns and for Amazon. And what we basically did is we took all this knowledge that at some point we were imparting anyways to users, and we brought it up in the funnel and we put it online and we worked together with partners to distribute it. And not only does that education brand build us and help us reach users and help us educate them, it lowers the bandwidth for supporting them down funnel. Those are some of the main lessons that we've learned from a marketing perspective. Of course, we have a lot more, and I'm always happy to speak to people after the webinar. We'll make sure that people get our contact details as well. I'd like at this point to hand over the microphone to Zach Dubois, who runs our freight team. And the freight team are basically the operational support for buyers on the marketplace. Zach, take it away.
Thanks, Eitan. Hi, everyone. So I'm Zach. I manage the freight team here at Freightos. As Eitan mentioned, it's essentially our customer service team for shipments that are transacted on the marketplace. And our job is to facilitate the end-to-end shipment execution by ensuring that buyers and sellers are on the same page. I say the word facilitate, which is kind of vague, but online freight can sometimes be a little undefined. It will take a lot of touches, a lot of different aspects and efforts for us to ensure that shipments are executed successfully, but that's our job. So you have a great marketing team. They brought you a new potential customer to your website. Now what? Well, there's a lot more to do because the first touch is really just the beginning of online freight. It's kind of like buying a car, actually. Customers will come in to the store or the website, and they want to browse a little bit, to do some research. They want to see their options. So too with online freight. There's a lot more touches. It's a more high stakes deal. So the challenge for us is to ensure that customers are engaged and feeling attended to. We have to educate them on what their options and what their research is, which they would otherwise look elsewhere for, and overall drive toward developing a sense of trust and giving them a compelling reason to buy with us. So overall, our end goal would be to scale all these touch points and the customer engagement so we could do it efficiently. But the first step is providing excellent customer service, shipment by shipment. So we mentioned Amazon. We may mention them again. In fact, when you talk about Amazon, which executives worldwide do more than about any other company, they built themselves into a $1 trillion company, well, depending on stock market swings, by focusing on the customer experience. Amazon recognized that their business starts and ends with the customer. And this approach is validated by their top-class 64 Net Promoter Score, which is essentially how confident their users are in using them and recommending them to others. And actually, Amazon's customer service team isn't really seen by the average buyer. This is things partly due to scale. They've managed to scale up the operation, and partly because of the low risk factor. Because in some ways, actually, Amazon has it easier than freight. Their retail customers, at least, are buying relatively low value, low stakes items. Whereas, as we mentioned, freight is not purchased or shipped, as many of you know, so easily. So freight requires more oversight and more hand-holding, especially when we're talking about inexperienced buyers. In the smartphone age, support starts and ends with online support. You need online chat as much as possible. And beyond online chat, it continues with email and phone. Customers always want someone to talk to. Depending on your resources available worldwide, you might staff your frontline customer support with low-skilled workers who make use of saved replies and a script, and then give them an escalation path to notify an account manager of any issues. But the key here is constant availability. It's crucial for your customer success teams to be integrated with the other teams at your company. Let's imagine this scenario. You call up a shoe retailer and ask if they have a certain model and color in your size. They answer, sorry, I only handle existing customers and customers in the physical store. Let me transfer you to our sales department. Okay. You get transferred to the sales department. You repeat the request to the sales rep, and they answer, we carry the item, but our storefront is out of stock. Let me transfer you to our warehouse staff. Okay. You repeat the request, And they answer, sorry, I need the product ID, which you can find online. Otherwise, I have no idea what you're talking about. So you beg the rep to stay on the phone with you while you frantically look it up. Then you give it to them. They take their time. 2 minutes later, they come back. Okay, I see this item is actually tagged for replacement. Let me connect you with our procurement manager. Okay, so now you're off the procurement manager. You give them the product ID. You and they are both very impressed with yourself that you already have this handy. And they confirm they actually did receive a delivery yesterday, and the storefront will be stocked up by the afternoon. Okay, great. You head to the store. You march up to the customer service desk. You ask your product, and oh, sorry, this item is actually out of stock. I won't continue with the story here, but you understand the point that customer service team needs to be knowledgeable enough and empowered to handle questions that touch on different parts of your operation. Silos are inexcusable. So now that we've covered the high touch aspects, we can talk about scaling our online freight support with automation tooling. And there are 3 pillars I'll talk about: data, product, and context. Number 1, data on your cargo movement, which hopefully you have integrated with track and trace systems, with your transportation management systems, your TMSs. And if you have the data on hand, you can proactively send notifications to your customers so they know where their cargo is at all times, advising them of the shipment status, and thereby eliminating the dreaded question we all get, where is my freight? Actually, I saw a stat somewhere that 90% cargo's customers' incoming questions is, where is my freight? Second, your product. You need to make sure that your product is optimized to provide the best experience, and a lot of that optimization will come from feedback from your customer service team and the customers themselves. Again, empowering your customer service team and focusing on the customer experience. And finally, 3, the context. It'll be very helpful to develop some collateral on your website, a help center, a knowledge base that answers the frequently asked questions and can even auto-suggest articles and relevant information based on where the customer is on your website. So I talked a lot about online support, the high touch, the low touch, the automation. If you do all this, you'll be well on your way to delighting customers and scaling your online freight. Thank you, and here's Ezzy.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Ezzy. I'm going to be talking a little bit about automating sales. I had the Freightos supply side on the marketplace, and I would like to start with a point that my colleague Aidan made at the beginning. It really has to do with what are the objectives that you're planning if you want to go online, and it really boils down to these key things. Are you focused on acquiring new customers, or are you focused on using your existing backend and infrastructure to service your own customers? I think that's a critical question, and as the more I speak, you will understand a little bit why are these dilemmas important and why they trickle down to decisions that you're going to have to make at some point. The other point is, which is related, is your strategy public or private? If you are talking about acquiring, you may very well go public in terms of pricing and your offering. But if you're talking about automating and making things easier for your own customers, then you might as well keep things private. Now, both things are related. Both things, you may use one to get to the second stage. But again, automating, it's always important because it also helps you to, keep the customers down the funnel and make them happy. One of the things that I really have seen so far, and that we have really learned in this time doing freight online, is that whenever it comes to doing pricing, you really should be agile. And this is not something that has to be taken lightly. The idea is that we know that to set up pricing correctly in this industry, even if you have your own offices, is not a simple task. But it does require you to have either a very, very well-oiled machine, a very, very good backend, or at least have some kind of flexibility that enables your salespeople or the platform that you're offering to turn around quotes and turn around offerings actually pretty quickly. If you think about it, think of a scenario in which someone is trying to make searches for a given lane, and he is not, and this person that you're, let's say in this case, trying to acquire, is not giving the right results. What you would need over there is you would need to turn it around quick so that you're able to convert, because there's a significant advantage in really having an immediate offering that someone that is attractive enough. That's also very, very important. It has to be attractive enough, but that someone can book it so that he knows that once the process is done, then next day his cargo is already moving, as opposed to the regular, let's say, paradigm of I'm going to need to ask my agent, and then it might take a couple days or 1 day or 2 days to get this quote together. In the online business, really, the getting my rates from the agent or my own office overnight, it's kind of putting off what could be a great experience. I want to talk a little bit about the backend. Now, a backend capability is really important to drive the whole experience of freight. We can take a look at, a lot of people, and here we were talking about Amazon. Now, the idea is that whenever you talk about Amazon, it's not just the front end. I mean, everyone can really put a front end. The front end may be fine, but it is really about how you integrate both. You will never be at a position where both of them will be perfect. So you're going to get to a trade-off where you're going to have to kind of juggle between a good backend capability that is able to keep shipment updates, that is able to keep your customer happy, whether it's a new customer or whether it's a customer you're acquiring. And the idea is that you will be able to keep them happy all the way along. And you don't need to have this amazing front end, but it has to be a mixture of both, and it's never the perfect timing. I think that this is something very, very important that we have learned over these years, that a lot of companies are very, very worried, oh, but is this the right timing or not? Yes, it is the right timing. This is already happening, and otherwise you would be, late. Finally, as we've been talking a little bit about the Amazon experience, you really should build, good customer support, attention, as my colleague Zach was saying, but really embrace what we call like a personal touch. There's always need for people. I mean, the fact that you are automating the process, making sure that things are running smooth and fast and automated doesn't mean that people are not looking for someone that they trust to get their cargo moving. Obviously, if you are moving a lot of cargo, people trust that this is in good hands, and this is really valuable for them. So there's no incompatibility between having this personal touch and at the same time automated support while keeping your customers up to date all day long. The idea is really to break silos in the organization so that you can service them and get to the right information whenever they need. I guess that's really my last point. We all remain available for any questions at the end, and I'm gonna head off to Eitan.
Hey, thanks so much, Chazi and Zach. I really appreciate it. One really important thing that we learned that just kind of jogged my memory from what Zach and Chazi were both talking about is that technology and culture never come hand in hand. And we were extremely disappointed. When we first launched our marketplace, we built it and nobody came. And a big part of it has to do with the fact that handholding, working directly with people and engaging with those people, not necessarily engaging with them by talking to them, but coming up with personable ways to talk to them digitally. So chatting, but having knowledgeable people that can chat, which is something that doesn't always happen. Chatting, but have people that actually speak English and can put down an emoji instead of just saying yes, right? It sounds really, really benign, and it sounds like not a particularly intelligent thing to do. But at the end of the day, having a person behind a platform is really, really important. And I'm going to pass the baton over to Daniel, who runs our Accelerate platform, to talk a little bit about specifically what we've identified across the SMB market and some new opportunities, as well as to talk a little bit about how he's worked together with logistics providers, carriers, and freight forwarders in order to implement new solutions. So thanks again for responding to that poll. I think this is really, really interesting stuff over here. Daniel, I'm going to hand it off to you now.
Great. Thank you, Eitan. As Eitan mentioned, I run our Accelerate business, which is one of the businesses we have at Freightos. And essentially, we help logistics providers begin their digital transformation through our online rate management and quoting platform. My team and I have implemented our software across some of the largest industry names around, such as Hellman, Siva, Nippon Express, and quite a few others. Now, for too long, providers have really neglected the SMB market as one that was simply too costly to both close and even service. But the reality is that that nearly a third of the import value in the U.S. comes from this segment. So finding a way to capture that is a surefire way to increase your top line. Now, there's this perception that to do that, there's a really high cost involved. But the reality of it is that a lot of logistics providers are trying to approach this with very traditional sales methods, right? They look at these numbers. If you look at the slide, they look at a number of 191,000 small and mid-size freight forwarders. 191,000 shippers, small and mid-sized shippers in the U.S. or importers in the U.S. And they think, well, how can I build relationships with all of these guys, with all these different companies to try and bring more revenue my way? But the fact of the matter is two things. One is that our research shows that this segment isn't really interested in the relationship side of things. So that's really good news. The other one is that they are very adept at using technology to both run their lives and their businesses. So providing an online technology for them and an online platform for them to do business with you means you can lower your costs and also service their needs. But if you need further proof of the changing logistics and supply chain industry, all you have to do is look at the incredible increase in direct-to-consumer businesses that have popped up recently. And just like Uber tempted people who would never take a taxi before to try a new experience, Amazon, Alibaba, and many others are really changing the way that that business is done online when it comes to freight. So it shows that there's a big space and it's growing. It's growing even more day by day. In fact, I was just reading a statistic the other day that said that just last year, over 250,000 sellers from China joined Amazon to start selling through Amazon. So there's an incredible market opportunity here, and it's just about being able to service those needs at low cost. So, one of the biggest concerns that I hear from freight forwarders that I speak to is, how transparency is the biggest threat to their business. And you have a quote up here on the screen that's from the CEO of DB Schenker, and I really love this quote because it really shows how some people, some freight forwarders and some carriers, though not many at this point, are really ready to embrace transparency. They ultimately realize that if you provide a good price, yes, you're going to get more business, but also there are other factors that come into it too. Good service can also propel your business, just like any other tool you might have in your arsenal. So in some cases, being transparent can actually help you win more business. And that's a lesson that we've learned on the marketplace as well. It's, at the end of the day, it's not all about price. Your reviews, your transit times, and many other factors can really lead lead the way to driving more revenue your way. And a lot of the concern around being transparent online is around benchmarking. Now, the reality of it is, whether you like it or not, benchmarking already happens, right? Even if it doesn't happen online, it's happening offline. If you think that this segment of the market is just calling you and booking, then you've got to rethink that, because at the end of the day, they can, even if your rates are not online and you're not posting them on your own website, they can call you, they can call another logistics provider and compare the rates, and they're already doing that. So if that's the biggest concern to you selling online, then it might be worth just rethinking that and really understanding that that at the end of the day, benchmarking already takes place. So we talked earlier about how leveraging technology allows you to target the SMB segment in a way that's perfect, because they're already familiar with technology. In fact, a recent study showed that customer interaction in B2B sales can drop by as much as 85% just by doing business online. So while there's a ton of money to be saved, there's actually even more to be made. with the average manual quote time across the top 20 freight forwarders hovering at around 57 hours, as you can see on the screen. That means that being able to provide instant pricing on your website can increase your win rate by 5% or even more. So it's not just about, Chezi and Eitan talked about, a decision you need to make, whether you're targeting new customers and targeting new customers and going after new revenue, or targeting or just exposing your site to existing customers and driving more efficiency. At the end of the day, you can both reduce your costs and increase your revenue if you do things in the right way. Now, logistics providers that I speak to are often overwhelmed by this concept of launching an online sales portal. They feel like they have one shot to make it work, and if they don't succeed, then it's a total failure. But it doesn't need to be looked at as this zero-sum game. At the end of the day, it can be an evolutionary process. You can launch this and understand the work through customer feedback, understand the kinks that you need to iron out. And that's often a much more effective way of making sure that you launch something that your customers and your users will want to come back to it and use. So, at a very relatively low price point, you can actually launch something to even a limited customer scope and tweak the process over time and just learn from that experience. And if you look at some of the largest forwarders and carriers in the industry, even those guys are leveraging third-party software. And making the most of the experience that those software providers have learned over time, so that they don't have to repeat some of those mistakes and some of those challenges. So often it can pay dividends to look elsewhere, look outside of your organization for a quick solution, so you can turn it into that evolutionary process rather than spend months or even years developing something as a one-shot approach. And then finding that actually it's been built in a way that doesn't really service the needs of your potential market. So in an effort to show you the little commitment required, we're here at Freightos, we're actually able to get you selling online in a matter of weeks. That includes walking you through important business decisions, defining a scope, and even getting your branded portal up and running. You can see here we do it in a matter of 8 weeks even. Now, we do that because we can leverage the various technologies we have, from back-end automation to front-end user experience. And this is all based on the great deal of customer feedback that we've received, both from carriers and forwarders, but also from shippers as well. So, the perspective that we have of having a marketplace allows us to look at both sides of the transaction, both the buyers and sellers, and use that feedback to then tailor a product that helps other logistics providers sell online. So as a next step, we're offering 5 select companies the opportunity to go through a free audit on their online sales presence. So after the call, I encourage you to go to the website listed here on the screen and sign up for that free audit, and we'll be selecting 5 companies that we can audit free of charge. So look forward to your questions. Look forward to working with you through that audit. And I'll hand it back over to Mayan to continue this.
And as Daniel mentioned, if you're interested in trialing a digital freight sales solution to bring your organization online, check out Freightos.com. Either way, we really hope that you got something out of this webinar and we were able to share some of our lessons. And we wish everybody the best of luck with their digitization solutions. We really believe that this is a future, not because digital is a goal, but because customer efficiency and customer experience is a goal. And going online while empowering that with a powerful backend and with powerful support and powerful expertise is, in our opinion, the best way to go forward. Thank you so much for your time. We hope you enjoyed this.